On Mother's Day, my daughter-in-law screamed at me in advance of 100 guests. "Get out of actuality and go fix lunch, you useless old woman." I aloof obeyed. As I was confined myself, she agate my plate to the attic and bogus me apple pie it up. I had set abreast $40,000 to accord to her. Instead, I gave her an envelope with a photo that bogus her canyon out. "I'm glad to accept you here. Follow my adventure until the end, and acquaint me which burgle you are watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Rebecca, and I'm 60 years old. I never thought that at this age, I would be continuing in the average of the kitchen of my own home charwoman aliment off the attic, while 100 guests watched me from the accessible dining allowance door. The bowl had burst to join the tiles with a blast that silenced all the conversations at the party. It had all started as the accustomed celebration. It was my son Daniel's 35th birthday, and like every year, Luna had insisted on throwing a huge party. Of course, I was the one who cooked, cleaned, an able aggregate while she strolled about like the perfect hostess, accepting adulation for an bright abode and an adorable meal that she had never alike touched. That morning, I had woken up at 5 a.m. to alpha the preparations. There was a broiled turkey, ancillary dishes, and homemade desserts that I knew Daniel had admired aback he was a boy. My arthritic easily ached afterwards 3 hours of peeling potatoes and chopping vegetables. But I didn't care. It was for my son, for the family. Luna had appeared in the kitchen about noon, impeccably dressed in a white suit that allegedly bulk added than my account-amusing Aegis check. She looked at me alive by the stove, and askance her mouth into that announcement of abhorrence that I knew so well. "Rebecca, achievement you didn't put too abundant alkali in the meat like after most time," she said afterwards, alike greeting me. "My company are actual acclimated to acceptable cooking." I swallowed and nodded. I had been active with them for 5 years. Aback, I was abandoned, and had abstruse that responding abandoned bogus things worse. Daniel formed so abundant that he rarely saw these little interactions amid Luna and me. For him, his wife was an angel who had abundantly agreed to accept his mother alive in their house. The guests started accession at 2 in the afternoon. I astern in the kitchen confined the dishes, while Luna greeted everyone in the active room. I could apprehend her crystalline laughter, her absorbing comments, the way everyone congratulated her on her admirable hospitality. "Daniel is so advantageous to have you." I heard our acquaintance Mrs. Henderson say to her, "Not all wives would go to so abundant agitation to throw such an affected party." Luna accustomed the adulation with apocryphal modesty, knowing altogether able-bodied that I was in the back, afraid over the hot stove while she shone in the spotlight. Aback, it was finally time to eat. Luna came into the kitchen with that algid smile she aloof abnormally for me. "Rebecca, I want you to serve dinner," she said. But there was article adapted in her tone. Article harder, added cruel, and please use the apron. We don't appetite the guest to anticipate your aloof addition guest. My cheeks austere with shame. The apron was one thing, but the way she said it, as if I were a assistant instead of the buyer of the abode area I had raised my son, cut me like a knife. I served bowl afterwards plate, accustomed heavy trays that bogus my aback ache. The guests ate and chatted active while I went aback and alternating amid the kitchen and the dining room. Some smiled politely, others aloof abandoned me as if I were allotment of the furniture. Aback, I was finally able to sit bottomward with my own plate. Luna came up from behind. She had been bubbler wine all afternoon, and her voice had that alarming bend that appeared aback she had too much. "What do you anticipate you're doing?" she asked in a loud voice, loud abundant that several guests affronted to look. I'm eating," I mumbled, confused. "Bistro actuality with the guests?" Her articulation rose a addition notch. "Rebecca, please. You apperceive altogether able-bodied that your abode is in the kitchen." The blackout that followed was deafening. I could feel the stares of anybody at the table. My affection started assault so adamantine I anticipation anybody could apprehend it. "Luna, I started, but she cut me off. "Get up," she yelled. "Go to the kitchen where you belong, you abortive old woman." The words hit me like a concrete slap. Useless old woman, in advance of 100 bodies I had accustomed for years. Bodies from my church, neighbors, Daniel's friends, all of them attractive at me with an admixture of shock and benevolence that bogus me appetite to abandon from the world. I got up slowly, my legs trembling. I didn't say annihilation because I couldn't. My throat was closed, my eyes austere with tears that I banned to afford in advance of all of them. But Luna wasn't finished. As I anesthetized her, accustomed my plate, she ashore out her foot. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, calculated, cruel. I tripped and my bowl flew through the air. Abolition assimilate the kitchen attic in an access of food and burst china. "Look what you did," she screamed, acting as if it had been my fault. "Clean up that mess immediately." I knelt on the algid floor, acrimonious up the pieces of ceramics with abashed hands. The aliment had spread everywhere. Mashed potatoes, gravy, chunks of turkey. All the assignment of my morning bargain to debris on the floor. But as I cleaned, article afflicted central of me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet and algid like the ice that forms on windows during winter. As my knees ached against the tiles and Luna connected to ball orders at me from above, I bogus a decision. I had endured 5 years of this. 5 years of babyish and ample humiliations. 5 years of actuality advised like an obstacle in the abode area I had aloft my son. 5 years of watching Luna manipulate Daniel, of seeing her absorb his money, of seeing her about-face my home into her claimed kingdom. I accomplished charwoman in silence. The guests had alternate to their conversations, though I could feel their casual glances abounding with pity. Aback, I got up from the floor. Luna had alternate to the living room, bedlam as if annihilation had happened. But I knew article had happened. Article had afflicted forever in that kitchen, amid the burst pieces of ceramics and the ashen food. That night, afterwards, all the guests had larboard and Luna had gone to bed. Annoyed with her performance, I astern alive in my small room. In my board drawer was an envelope I had been extenuated for weeks, an envelope that independent $40,000 in cash, money I had adored for years to accord to Luna as a gift. But now I had added affairs for that money, affairs that Luna would never see coming. The $40,000 had been my secret for 3 years. Every ages aback my amusing Aegis analysis arrived. I set abreast what I could. $20 here, $50 there. Sometimes added aback I managed to save on medicine, or aback Daniel gave me added money afterwards, Luna knowing. My plan had been to accord that money to Luna for their accessible Belle's anniversary, celebration that maybe, aloof maybe, it would accomplish her amusement me better. How absurd I had been. The morning afterwards the party, I woke up with an accuracy I hadn't acquainted in years. As I bogus coffee in the bashful kitchen, I took the envelope from its ambuscade abode behind the aroma jars. $40,000 in $100 bills, anxiously counted and saved. Money that Luna would never apperceive existed. But there was addition envelope too. A abate one that I had been advancing in abstruse for the aftermost 6 weeks. This one didn't accommodate money. It independent something much added valuable. The truth. It had all started 2 months ago. Aback I went to the bazaar and saw Luna abrogation a Burgale auberge with a man who was definitely not my son. At first I anticipation my eyes were artful me. I'm 60 years old afterwards all, and my apparition isn't what it acclimated to be. But aback I saw them hug and kiss foolishly abutting to the man's red sports car. I knew I hadn't been wrong. Marcus Holloway. I accustomed him immediately. He had been Daniel's best acquaintance aback college, his best man at the wedding, the man who had banquet at our table every Friday night, the man who hugged my son like a brother while sleeping with his wife in the afternoons. That night I couldn't sleep. I astern alive apprehensive what to do. Should I acquaint Daniel and accost Luna? But I knew my daughter-in-law able-bodied abundant to apperceive she would abjure everything. She was the adept of manipulation, and able at making others' agnosticism their own reality. So, I absentively to delay and watch and document. For the abutting few weeks, I started advantageous absorption in a way I never had before. I noticed that Luna went arcade every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, consistently in a hurry, consistently accepting too dressed up for simple errands. I noticed that Marcus visited our abode, added generally aback Daniel wasn't home, consistently with some excuse about bottomward article off or acrimonious article up. One afternoon while Luna was in the Battery afterwards one of her arcade days, I arrested her phone. I apperceive it was wrong, but after years of humiliation, my censor had developed some acceptable cracks. The messages I begin bogus me ailing to my stomach. Not abandoned did they affirm the affair, but they appear that they had been bedlam at Daniel abaft his back. Luna had accounting to Marcus about how asinine her bedmate was, how accessible it was to dispense him, and how he would never doubtable annihilation because he trusted her too much. He's like a little puppy, Luna had written. He does aggregate I acquaint him and gives me aggregate I want. Meanwhile, you and I can accept all the fun we want. Marcus's acknowledgement was aloof as despicable. Poor Daniel. He was consistently too acceptable for his own good. At Atomic, his money is advantageous for these adventurous getaways for us. I read those messages, abashed with rage. Not abandoned were they betraying my son, but they were spending his money on their affair. Daniel formed 60 hours anniversary to abutment the affairs Luna demanded, and she was application that money to accounts her infidelity. But there was more, abundant more. Afterward the letters backward, I credible that the affair had been action on for added than 2 years. 2 abounding years of lies, of betrayal, of amusement at my son's expense. And affliction of all, they had been planning to get a annulment already. Luna could defended a acceptable sum in the divorce settlement. I aloof charge a brace added years, Luna had written. Aback I get divorced. I'll get to accumulate bisected of everything. The house, the savings, the investments. Afresh we can be calm acutely with abundant money to live comfortably. Marcus had replied, and what about old Rebecca? She'll be the first to go. Daniel will accumulate her in some bargain nursing home somewhere, Luna had responded. I'll assuredly accept my house all to myself. A bargain nursing home? After accepting aloft Daniel since he was a baby, afterwards accepting taken affliction of the abode for 5 years, while they lived their complete life, Luna had already absentively my fate. A bargain abode area, I would be larboard to die slowly while she enjoyed the affluence my son had built. That night, with abashed hands, I started demography screenshots of everything, every message, every photo, every sordid detail of their betrayal. I additionally started afterward them discreetly, documenting their encounters with photos taken from a distance. In 3 weeks, I had gathered abundant affirmation to abort the complete action Luna had congenital on lies. But I knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't aloof appearance aggregate to Daniel at once. Luna was too accomplished at manipulating situations. I bear the complete moment. The complete moment came the morning afterwards. The action aback Luna came bottomward for breakfast with that annoyed smile she had beat aback the night before. Good morning, Rebecca, she said with apocryphal sweetness. I achievement you abstruse your lesson from aftermost night. We don't appetite any added awkward scenes, do we? I stared at her as I bogus her coffee exactly the way she admired it. 2 spoonfuls of sugar, a burst of cream, just as I had done every morning for 5 years. By the way, she continued, sitting down at the table and extending her altogether manicured nails, Marcus is advancing over for cafeteria today. Daniel is at that big meeting until late, so accomplish article special. You apperceive how abundant Marcus appreciates the acceptable home-cooked meal. The irony was so thick I could about cut it with a knife. Marcus advancing for cafeteria at Daniel's table, while my son was working to abutment the woman who was betraying them both. Of course, I said quietly. I'll accomplish article very special. Luna smiled, annoyed with my credible submission. She had no idea that in my board drawer, abutting to the envelope with $40,000, there was addition envelope, an envelope that independent a single photograph that would change her apple forever. A photograph I had taken the anniversary afore aback I had followed them to their admired hotel. A clear, sharp, undeniable image. Luna and Marcus in a position that larbored no agnosticism about the nature of their relationship. But that photo was aloof the beginning. What Luna didn't apperceive was that I also had affirmation of article abundant worse. Article that would not abort her marriage, but could abort her entire life. As I watched her alcohol her coffee, airy and arrogant, I savored the moment. Actual soon, that smile would be wiped from her face forever. The truth had amorphous to be appear 3 weeks beforehand. A back-eye assassin Samuel Hayes, a clandestine investigator who formed from a small appointment aloft the Burgle Bakery. It wasn't an accommodation I bogus lightly. The $500 I paid him was about 2 months of my claim savings, but I knew I needed professional help. Samuel was a man in his 50s, alert and efficient. Aback I showed him the aboriginal photos I had taken of Luna and Marcus. He nodded with the announcement of addition, who had apparent this story too abounding times before. Mrs. Collins, he had said, I understand your situation, but you charge to apperceive that this goes added than you think. I didn't, accept what he meant, until he came aback at anniversary afterwards, with a book that afflicted aggregate anticipation I knew about Luna. My daughter-in-law's real name wasn't Luna Miller. As she had told us aback, she affiliated Daniel. Her real name was Carmen Valdez, and she had accomplished that she had anxiously hidden for 7 years of marriage. Your daughter-in-law was arrested in Nevada 10 years ago for marital fraud, Samuel explained, assuming me official documents. She married 3 adapted men in a 2-year period, elimination their coffer accounts afore disappearing. My easily trembled as I apprehend the badge reports. There were photos of Luna, younger, but acutely her, along with her aliases, Carmen Valdez, Sofia Martinez, Isabella Rodriguez. Each identity had been anxiously crafted to allurement successful abandoned men. How is that possible? I whispered. Daniel ran an accomplishments analysis on her afore they got married. He's accurate about these things. Samuel smiled sadly. Your daughter-in-law is a professional, ma'am. The abstracts your son saw were forged. Birth certificates, university degrees, application references, all bogus by an arrangement that specializes in creating apple pie identities for con artists. The book Independent Abundant More, Luna had been accurately affiliated to a man named Robert Sanchez in Las Vegas, a Bakshi affiliated Daniel. Technically, her marriage to my son was absent and void. But there was article alike worse. There's more, Samuel continued, his articulation bottomward to a whisper. Your daughter-in-law did an assignment abandoned in Nevada. Her capital abettor was a man alleged Marcus Holloway. My world stopped. Marcus. Daniel's best friend, his best man at the wedding, the man who had been accepting banquet at our table for 7 years while planning to abort my son from the inside. Marcus and Carmen worked calm to betray 3 adapted victims. Samuel explained, the arrangement was consistently the same. She would accessory the target. He would become a budding acquaintance to accretion their trust, and calm they would abandon the accounts before disappearing. Why didn't they abandon afterward scamming Daniel? I asked, although allotment of me already knew the answer. Because Daniel affronted out to be added admired than they expected, Samuel replied. Your son congenital a ample affluence during these years. Instead of burglary, a anchored bulk and running, they abstively to break and milk the banknote cow for as connected as possible. He showed me added documents. Coffer annal that showed approved transfers from Daniel's accounts to offshore accounts controlled by Luna and Marcus. For 7 years, they had been systematically burglary babyish amounts that Daniel would never notice. $500 here, $1,000 there. In total, Samuel said, we appraisal they've baseborn about $250,000 during the marriage. $250,000, a division of $1 million. The money Daniel had formed so adamantine to earn, money he thought was accepting his family's future, had been abounding anon into the accounts of his 2 closest predators. But the affliction was yet to come. There's article else, Mrs. Collins, Samuel said, afraid for the aboriginal time. Article I begin in my investigations into Carmen's past. He handed me an abstracted folder. Central were newspaper clippings from 12 years ago from a babyish boondocks in Arizona. The headline algered me to the bone. Young woman disappears afterwards a joint scammers. The victim was alleged Elena Vasquez, a 26-year-old abecedary who had credible that her fiancé was scamming her forth with his best friend. Elena had threatened to go to the police. 3 canicule later, she disappeared. Her body was never found. Are you suggesting that Luna? I couldn't finish the sentence. I'm not suggesting anything, Samuel said carefully. But Carmen Valdez and Marcus Holloway were in Arizona at that time application added names, and Elena Vasquez had discovered their arrangement absolutely as you did. I acquainted the air escape from my lungs. Not only was Luna an able con artist, but she was potentially article abundant worse, and I was active beneath the same roof as her, alive her secrets. What do you acclaim I do? I asked. My voice was about a whisper. Samuel bankrupt the binder slowly. Be very, very careful, Mrs. Collins. Bodies like Carmen don't alternate to do whatever is necessary to assure their secrets if she suspects you apperceive something. He didn't charge to accomplishment the sentence. I accustomed perfectly. That night I returned home with the book hidden in my arcade bag. Luna was in the active allowance watching television, bedlam at some adventurous comedy. She seemed so normal, so innocent. But now, aback, I looked at her. I saw the predator she absolutely was. How was your day, Rebecca? She asked afterwards access to attending at me. Achievement, you didn't absorb too abundant money at the supermarket. You know, Daniel worries about expenses. The irony was nauseating. Luna, who had stolen a quart of actor dollars, was blame me for spending money on food. It was a accustomed day, I replied, befitting my articulation steady. Nothing special. But as I went up to my room, I knew that aggregate had changed. On my board abutting to the envelope with $40,000 and the photograph of Luna with Marcus. I now had article abundant added powerful. The complete affirmation of who Carmen Valdez absolutely was. Daniel would be home in 2 hours. Luna would be cat and mouse for him with her complete smile and her Judith kisses. Marcus would appear to banquet on Friday as always. Irina the role of the loyal best friend. But this time it would be different. This time, I would accept the befalling to betrayal the two predators who had been bloodthirsty on my family for years. I, aloof, had to acquisition the complete moment, and that moment came sooner than I expected. The abutting day, Luna appeared that she capital to host a special banquet to bless Daniel's advance at work. An affectionate dinner, she said. Aloof for abutting ancestors and a few adapted friends. I'll allure Marcus, of course, she said casually, and maybe a few of my company from the club. It'll be a complete night. As I listened to her plan her abutting performance, I smiled for the aboriginal time in weeks. Luna was adapted about one thing. It would be a perfect night, but not in the way she expected. The envelope with the photograph of her and Marcus was still cat and mouse in my drawer. But now I knew that a simple photo of adultery wouldn't be enough. I had affirmation of article abundant added devastating, and aback the adapted moment came, I would duke it all over. The special banquet was appointed for Saturday night. Luna had spent the complete anniversary acclamation every detail with the attention of the accustomed advancing for battle. She accessed 12 people. Marcus, of course, a few a company from her tennis club, 2 adjoining couples, and Daniel's business partners, who she considered important for his career. As always, I was airy in her plans, except as the actionable cook. For 3 days, she had me advancing appetizers, testing recipes, and authoritative abiding aggregate was complete for her big night. Rebecca, I appetite this night to be flawless, she told me Friday morning, as she advised the bedfellow account for the 10th time. Daniel deserves to accept his success acclaimed properly. Daniel's success, the irony HD in my chest. My son had formed 16-hour canicule for months to get that promotion, sacrificing time with friends, hobbies, alike me and all to accord Luna the affairs she demanded, without a life that she had been systematically annexation him for 7 years. That afternoon, while Luna was out for her account spa treatment, which I now knew was her time with Marcus, I alleged Samuel Hayes. "Are you abiding you appetite to do this tonight?" he asked me. "Already you accessible that Pandora's box, you can't abutting it." "I'm sure," I replied, afraid at the compactness in my own voice. "My son deserves to apperceive the truth. All right, I sent you all the added affidavit you requested by mail. It should access this afternoon. And Mrs. Collins, be careful. Carmen is capricious aback she feels cornered." The amalgamation accustomed at 400 p.m. Central were certified copies of everything. The police letters from Nevada, the alliance annal that showed Luna was still accurately affiliated to Robert Sanchez, the bank annal of the transfers, and a like advice about Elena Vasquez and her disappearance. There was additionally something I hadn't expected. Photos of Luna and Marcus taken that actual afternoon at the Burgle Hotel. Samuel had followed my request to get alpha evidence, affirmation they couldn't abjure or explain. As I organized all the abstracts in chronological order, I acquainted a aberrant, calm booty over me. Afterwards, years of feeling powerless, I assuredly had ascendancy over something. The accuracy was my weapon, and it was as aciculate as a razor. The guests started accession at 7. Luna was beaming in a dejected dress that probably cost added than my account rent. She greeted anniversary being with ossive hugs and that agreeable beam she acclimated aback she wanted to impress. Daniel came home from assignment aloof in time, still in his suit, visibly tired, but animated because of the accomplishment Luna had bogus to bless him. My affection bankrupt to see the genuine gratitude in his eyes aback. He kissed her on the cheek. "Thank you for acclamation all this, honey," he said. "I apperceive how much assignment it took you." "Anything for you, my love," Luna replied with that sweet articulation she had able over years of deception. Marcus was the aftermost to arrive, of course. He came in with that assured smile he had able over years of betrayal, adhering Daniel like the brother he affected to be. "Congratulations, brother," he shouted, patting him on the back with false enthusiasm. "You absolutely deserve it. You deserve it," I anticipation bitterly. "You deserve to apperceive that your best acquaintance has been betraying you for years." The banquet went on like all of Luna's dinners. Altogether choreographed, abounding of apparent conversations and forced laughter. I served anniversary bowl in silence, airy as always, watching the performance from the shadows. During dessert, Luna stood up with her wine bottle in hand. "I appetite to accomplish a toast," she announced, her articulation bulging throughout the dining room. "To my admirable bedmate Daniel, who works so hard to accord us this admirable action, and to our baby accompany abnormally Marcus, who has been like a brother to us all these years. Anybody aloft their glasses. Marcus smiled and winked at Luna in a way that abandoned I noticed. Daniel beamed with pride, absolutely blind that he was toasting his own betrayal. And of course, Luna continued, her boring award abundance from the kitchen, to family, to those who accept their abode and their role in our lives. That was the aftermost straw, her abode and her role, as if I were an agent instead of the mother who had aloft the man who was acknowledging her. I boring took off my apron and absolved into the dining room. Anybody looked at me in surprise. I never disconnected Luna's dinners. Luna, I said, my articulation calm but clear, I think there's article you should see. Her smile faltered for a moment. Rebecca, we're in the average of a celebration. Whatever it is can wait. I didn't respond. Demography the envelope from my apron. This can't wait. The blackout in the dining allowance was palpable. Daniel looked at me, confused, while Marcus had acutely palled. What is that? Luna asked. But there was article in her articulation that adapted she already knew. It's a gift, I said, extending the envelope to her. Similar to the one I had planned to accord you. $40,000 I had adored for years, thinking that maybe it would acquire me your respect. Luna blinked, acutely adrift by the change in my behavior. But afterwards, Daniel's altogether action aftermost weak, I continued. I absentatively, you deserve something different. Article added appropriate. With abashed hands, Luna took the envelope. The allowance was so quiet that I could apprehend the cardboard coiled as she opened it. The aboriginal action she saw was the photograph, the clear, sharp, undeniable angel of her and Marcus in a compromising position al fresco the Burgle Hotel. Taken aloof hours earlier, the blush absolutely drained from her face. Her legs wobbled, and for a moment I anticipation she was action to fall. What is this? She whispered, although we both knew absolutely what it was. Keep looking, I said calmly. There's more. With abashed fingers, Luna pulled out the next document. A certified archetype of the Alliance Almanac amid Carmen Valdez and Robert Sanchez Anachronis, 2 years afore her bells to Daniel. Marcus had gotten up from his chair, his face an affectation of panic. Daniel was attractive amid the photo and his wife, trying to action what he was seeing. Luna, Daniel said, his articulation about a whisper. What is this? But Luna didn't answer. She was staring at the third document, the badge address from Nevada, that articular her as Carmen Valdez, wanted for conjugal fraud. It was afresh that she collapsed. It wasn't an affected faint like in the movies. It was a complete, total adverse collapse. Her body folded in on itself as if she had accustomed a concrete blow, and she fell to her knees on the dining allowance floor. The guests jumped back, some of them gasping. Marcus ran to join her, but he stopped aback. Daniel looked at him with an announcement I had never apparent on my son before. Don't you cartel blow her? Daniel said. His articulation was alarmingly low. Don't you cartel blow my wife? Daniel, brother, I can explain, Marcus began. Explain what? Daniel captivated up the photo with abashed hands. Explain why my best acquaintance is sleeping with my wife. Explain why my wife allegedly has another name in addition husband. Luna was ball on the floor, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of agitation from a woman who knew that her anxiously complete apple had aloof collapsed. There are added documents in the envelope, I said softly. Acclamation Daniel. Abundant more. Daniel dumped the capacity of the envelope onto the dining allowance table. Coffer records, added photographs, badge reports, all broadcast in advance of the guests who had appeared to bless his success. The blackout that followed was absolute. 12 people stared at the affirmation of a betrayal so complete, so adverse that no one knew what to say. Finally, Daniel spoke. His articulation burst but firm. I appetite anybody to leave now. The guests didn't charge to be told twice. They got up and larboard in silence. Some mumbled apologies. Others artlessly fled from the discomfort. Marcus was the aftermost to move. He approached Daniel with his easily outstretched pleading. Daniel, please let me explain. Things got complicated, but we never capital to aching you. My son looked at him with the aloofness that afraid me. Get out of my house, he said quietly. And if I any time see you near my ancestors again, I'm calling the police. Marcus looked at Luna, who was still ball on the floor, afresh at me. His eyes met mine, and I saw something there that alged my blood. It wasn't remorse. It was a threat. Afterwards, Marcus left. Daniel knelt beside Luna, not to abundance her, but to speak. How abundant of this is true, he asked. Luna aloft her arch, and for the first time in 7 years, I saw her accurate face afterwards, the affectation of the complete wife, without the act of the beholden daughter-in-law. It was the face of Carmen Valdez, the able scammer. Everything, she whispered, aggregate is true. And with those 3 words, my son's alliance came to an end. The canicule that followed the banquet were like watching a architecture crumble in apathetic motion. Luna, or Carmen, as we now knew her absolute name was, didn't get up from the dining allowance attic for about an hour afterwards the guests left. She astern there, sobbing, trembling occasionally, mumbling incoherently about how aggregate had gone wrong. Daniel had sat in his chair, staring at the abstracts broadcast on the table. He hadn't screamed or erupted in fury as I had expected. Instead, there was a calmness in him that afraid me added than any affronted outburst. "Mom," he assuredly said, his articulation about audible. "How connected accept you accustomed about this?" The catechism went through me like an arrow. 6 weeks, I admitted. I started to Doubtable 2 months ago, but I didn't accept affidavit until 6 weeks ago. He nodded slowly, as if he were processing every word. "Why didn't you acquaint me sooner?" "Because I knew she would acquisition a way to accomplish you agnosticism me," I replied honestly. "And because I bear to be absolutely sure." That night, Daniel stayed up until 4 a.m. Account every document, acceptance every detail. Carmen had gone up to the adept bedchamber and hadn't appeared out since. I could apprehend her casual cries through the walls, but they no best articulate like remorse. They articulate like self-pity. The abutting day, Daniel assassin a lawyer. Margaret Thompson was a astringent woman in her 60s, specializing in complicated divorces and conjugal fraud. Aback Daniel showed her all the affirmation that Samuel had gathered, her eyes lit up with the achievement of a predator who had found easy prey. "This is added than enough," she told Daniel during their aboriginal meeting. "The alliance is absent and void due to bigamy. She is an advantage to any conjugal property. In fact, we could sue her for the $250,000 she stole. But Daniel was too acceptable for his own good, a like afterwards aggregate he had discovered. I aloof appetite her to leave, he told me that night. I want her to abandon from our lives forever. Carmen had been bound in the allowance for 3 canicula back. She assuredly came down. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen, her beard was a mess, and she was cutting the aforementioned clothes as the night of the dinner. But aback she saw me in the kitchen. Article in her eyes changed. Desperation adapted into article added dangerous. "This is your fault," she told me. Her articulation was from errant so much. "You destroyed my life." I affronted boring to face her. "I didn't abort anything, Carmen. You congenital your life on lies, and lies consistently eventually collapse." Her face angled with fury. "My name is Luna. I'm Luna Miller Collins. I've been an allotment of this ancestors for 7 years. Your name is Carmen Valdez," I replied calmly. "And you were never a allotment of this family. You were a parasite feeding off it." That's aback she attacked me. She lunged at me with her nails out, screaming obscenities. For a moment I feared for my life, but Daniel appeared in the kitchen aloof in time, grabbing her by the accoutrements and captivation her abroad from me. "Let go of me!" Carmen screamed. This old witch broke everything. "Aggregate I formed for." "What you formed for," Daniel said, his articulation as algid as ice, "was to abduct my life. That was the aboriginal time I had any time apparent my son absolutely angry. Not atomic rage, but article added and added controlled. Carmen charge accept apparent article in his eyes too, because she stopped angry and burst to join him, sobbing. "Daniel, please," she pleaded. "I perceive I bogus mistakes, but I adulation you. I absolutely adulation you. We can get through this." Daniel pushed her abroad from him as if she were article dirty. "You don't apperceive what adulation is, Carmen. You abandoned apperceive how to dispense it." The abutting few canicule were a cyclone of acknowledged activity. Margaret Thompson had started the annulment process, Arctic the joint coffer accounts, and filed a civilian accusation for the base-born funds. Carmen had hired her own lawyer, the afraid man who had acutely accomplished that he had an absurd case to win. But Carmen had one aftermost ace up her sleeve. An anniversary afterwards, the battle in the kitchen. The police arrived. 2 austere admiral who asked to allege with me about assertive accusations. Carmen had filed a complaint alleging that I had been afflictive her, aggressive her, and that I had biased affirmation adjoin her. She claimed that the photographs had been digitally manipulated and that the abstracts about her accomplished were malicious fabrications. She's a absinthian old woman who never accustomed me. The detective told me she's aggravating too. Abort my marriage because she's anxious of my accord with her son. Fortunately, Samuel Hayes had advancing this possibility. He had certified copies of all the documents, testimonies from the sources in Nevada, and argumentative evidence that the photographs had not been altered. The badge analysis lasted absolutely 3 canicule afore they dismissed Carmen's accusations as false. But the accident to her believability was devastating. Her own advocate resigned after advertent that she had additionally ariaed to him about several aspects of her case. That's aback Marcus reappeared. He had been in ambuscade for 2 weeks, allegedly cat and mouse for Aggregate to calm down. But aback he accomplished that Carmen was losing, he absently to save his own skin. He showed up at Margaret Thompson's appointment with his own lawyer, alms to testify against Carmen in barter for immunity. He had abundant annal of all the banking transfers, copies of text messages, and affirmation of added schemes they had been active together. Marcus Holloway was smart, Margaret explained to me afterwards the meeting. He accomplished that Carmen would bore him with her if he didn't act first. His testimony seals the case completely. Carmen began out about Marcus's betrayal that aforementioned afternoon. Her acknowledgement was spectacular, alike by her standards. She showed up at the abode screaming, breaking things, and aggressive to acquaint the accuracy about everyone. Marcus and I were a team, she screamed as Daniel alleged the police. If I go down, he's advancing with me, and so are you, Daniel. You're all action to pay. But her threats were empty. Afterwards, Marcus as an ally. Afterwards, money for appropriate lawyers. And with all the affirmation to join her, Carmen had no ability to aching anyone else. The badge arrested her that night for actionable abstinent adjustment that Daniel had acquired canicule earlier. She spent 3 canicule in Bastille afore she could call him bail. Aback she came out, she had changed. She was no best the furious, desperate woman from before. She was article-added dangerous, a woman who had accustomed that she had lost everything, and who now abandoned capital to account the best accident possible. This isn't over, she told me aback. She came to aces up her things beneath badge supervision. You may accept won this battle, Rebecca, but I apperceive things about this ancestors that could abort you all. I looked her anon in the eyes. You know best acceptability here, Carmen. You can know best aching my family. She smiled, but there was no joy in that expression. We'll see. 3 canicule later, Carmen Valdez disappeared. She arranged her best admired accoutrements brief and artlessly vanished. She didn't leave a forwarding address. She didn't say area she was going. One day she was there. The next she had abolished as if she had never existed. Daniel began an agenda in the adept bedroom. This isn't over. I'll be back aback you atomic apprehend it. But I knew she wouldn't appear back. Carmen was a predator, and predators consistently look for accessible prey. Daniel was no best accessible prey. He was no best the above-board man he had been aback she met him. Marcus didn't break either. Afterwards testifying against Carmen, he awash his abode and confused to addition state. He had absent not abandoned his accomplice, but additionally the best acquaintance he had betrayed for years. For the aboriginal time in 7 years, the abode was at peace. There was no added tension, no added walking on eggshells, no added assuming that Aggregate was accomplished aback it clearly wasn't. Daniel had absent a wife and a best friend, but he had acquired article added valuable, the truth, and after living in lies for so long, the accuracy acquainted like freedom. But I knew that the real healing was aloof beginning. 6 months afterwards, Carmen disappeared. Daniel and I were sitting in the backyard, adequate morning coffee and an adequate blackout we hadn't Aggregate in years. The backyard was blooming and well kept. The flowers I had buried were blooming without the connected astriction that had bedeviled the abode for so long. Mom, Daniel assuredly said, breaking the silence, I never appropriately thanked you for what you did. I put my cup on the saucer and looked at him. My son had afflicted during these months. The stress lines about his eyes had softened. He had acquired a back weight that I hadn't accomplished he had lost, and for the first time in years, he seemed absolutely at peace. You don't charge to acknowledge me for protecting my family, I said. But I do charge to apologize, he continued, his voice abounding with emotion. For 7 years I let Carmen amusement you horribly. I saw you serve, clean, and abide her humiliations, and I did annihilation to stop her. I acquainted a agglomeration in my throat. Were you in love, Daniel, or did you aloof anticipate you were? No, he said firmly. That's no excuse. You're my mother. You aloft me abandoned afterwards Dad died. You worked 2 jobs to put me through college. You sacrificed aggregate for me, and I let a drifter amusement you like you were airy in your own home. Tears began to cycle bottomward my cheeks. We had had abounding conversations during these months, but this was the aboriginal time Daniel had absolutely confronted his role in everything that had happened. For years I wondered, why didn't you angle up for me? I admitted. Why didn't you any time see what Carmen was accomplishing to me? I alike came to anticipate there was article amiss with me. Daniel bankrupt his eyes, the affliction axiomatic on his face. My God, Mom. Carmen was actual accomplished at manipulating me. Every time I noticed something, she had an explanation. She said you were difficult, that you were anxious of our relationship, that you bear boundaries because you were too demanding. And you believed her. I capital to accept her. He accustomed it was easier to accept that the botheration was you than to face the achievability that my complete wife was a liar. We remained in blackout for a few minutes, processing years of affliction and misunderstanding. Do you apperceive what aching me the most? I assuredly asked him. Daniel befuddled his head. That afterwards all I sacrificed for you. Afterwards all the years I cared for you and admired you unconditionally. You chose to accept a woman you had abandoned a custom for a few years, instead of dupe the mother who had been there your whole life. Daniel got up from his armchair and knelt beside mine, demography my easily in his. You're right, he said, his articulation breaking, and there's no alibi for that. But I appetite you to apperceive that I will never any time afresh let anyone amusement you that way, and I will never afresh agnosticism, you aback, you acquaint me, article is wrong. I hugged him then, activity as if I was accepting my son aback afterwards years of accepting absent him to a stranger. The following weeks brought added revelations. Margaret Thompson had managed to balance $80,000 of the funds that Carmen and Marcus had stolen. It wasn't everything, but it was significant. Daniel acclimated some of that money to acclimate the house, removing all traces of Carmen's reign. I appetite this to be your abode again, Mom, he told me, as the workers tore bottomward the wallpaper Carmen had chosen. I appetite you to feel welcome actuality again. He additionally insisted on giving me the $40,000 I had adored for Carmen. That money is yours, he told me aback. I protested. You adored it from your own amusing aegis, and I appetite you to use it for yourself. Trips, hobbies, whatever makes you happy. For the aboriginal time in decades, I had money that was absolutely mine. Not for the family, not for emergencies, but aloof for me. I absentively to use it for things that Carmen had never allowed. I redecorated my room, bought books, and even enrolled in painting classes at the Association Center. The better transformation, however, was in Daniel himself. Afterwards, Carmen consistently manipulating him, my son began to rediscover who he absolutely was. He started affable again, article he had loved, but that Carmen had consistently criticized. He renewed his affection for photography. He alike started blind out with a company that Carmen had cautiously pushed abroad over the years. I feel like I'm alive up from an actual connected dream, he told me one night. A dream area I wasn't myself. But the accurate analysis of our healing came when Daniel started dating Addition New. Sarah was a 42-year-old nurse, divorced with 2 boyish children. She was the adverse of Carmen in every way, applied instead of glamorous, honest instead of manipulative, absolutely affectionate instead of absorbing any affected way. The aboriginal time Daniel asked me what I anticipation of her, my affection stopped. For years I had abstrused to accumulate my opinions to myself, to smile and nod no amount what I absolutely felt. I appetite your honest opinion, Mom, he said. If there's annihilation you don't like about Sarah, I charge to know. I'm never action to ignore your gut activity about bodies again. I like her, I said, and it was completely true. She's genuine. She's not aggravating to affect you. And best importantly, she treats you with absolute respect, not that affected account that Carmen acclimated to dispense you. Daniel smiled. That's exactly what I thought. Sarah started advancing over for Sunday dinners, sometimes bringing her children. It was admirable to accept kids in the abode again, bushing the spaces that had been bashful for so long, and Sarah consistently insisted on allowance with the cooking, alleviative me as an according instead of an airy servant. Mrs. Collins, she said to me one afternoon as we done dishes together. Daniel told me what happened with his ex-wife. I want you to apperceive that I absolutely account the abode you accept in his life. This is your house, your family. I'm just a guest. I acquainted tears able-bodied up in my eyes. Call me Rebecca, I said, and you're not a guest. If Daniel is blessed with you, afresh you're acceptable here. A year afterwards Carmen's disappearance, we accustomed account of her for the aftermost time. She had been arrested in Florida under another name, accused of scamming an 80-year-old man. Apparently, she had gone back to her old tricks. But this time she had called the amiss victim, a retired detective who had apparent through her lies immediately. Do you feel annihilation for her? Daniel asked me aback we saw the news. I anticipation about it for a moment. Pity, I finally admitted. Benevolence for addition. Who never abstruse that absolute relationships based on accurate adulation are account added than anything you can abduct or manipulate. Daniel nodded. I feel the aforementioned way, and relief that she's so far abroad from us. Marcus had additionally been arrested in Nevada on charges accompanying to his accomplished scams. Apparently, his affidavit adjoined Carmen hadn't been abundant to assure him from his own crimes. The aftermost I heard of him, he was confined to 5-year Bastille sentence. During the additional year afterwards, Carmen's departure, Daniel and Sarah got engaged. This time, Daniel asked for my blessing before proposing. Are you abiding it's the adapted thing? I asked him. Not because I doubted Sarah, but because I capital to be abiding that Daniel was authoritative the accommodation for the adapted reasons. I'm sure, he told me. But this time, I'm going to do things differently. No big ceremonies, no aggravating to affect anyone, just a budding family, bodies who absolutely adulation us. Daniel and Sarah's bells was everything his aboriginal bells hadn't been. Intimate, heartfelt, and abounding of absolute adulation instead of spectacle. They asked me to airing bottomward the alley with Daniel, acutely acknowledging the role I had in his life. You're the most important woman in my life, he said as we walked, and I appetite Sarah and anybody abroad to apperceive it. Now, 3 years afterwards it all started. I'm sitting in the aforementioned backyard area Daniel and I had that crucial conversation. But now I'm not alone. Sarah is abutting to me, assuming me how to use a book to attending at pictures of her kids in college. Daniel is in the kitchen advancing cafeteria for all of us, singing cautiously as he cooks. The abode is abounding of absolute action again, not the fake, perfect action that Carmen had created, but the messy, imperfect, but genuinely happy action of an absolute family. Sometimes I admiration what would accept happened if I had never begun the courage to betrayal Carmen. If I had remained silent, constant her humiliations, watching my son be manipulated and beggared afterwards accomplishing anything. But it no best matters. I made the adapted accommodation at the adapted time. I adequate my ancestors the way I knew how, with patience, with evidence, and with the truth. And now, for the aboriginal time and years, we are all exactly where we belong. Did you like my story? And which burgle are you alert from? Let's accommodate it in the comments. If you like the story, you can abutment me by sending a cool acknowledgement so I can accumulate bringing added belief like this. Acknowledge you so abundant for your candid support. I'm attractive advance to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new action belief that I awful recommend. They're so abundant added on my channel. Don't balloon to subscribe. See you in the abutting action story. With adulation and respect.